When I was 12 years old, I had an experience that would linger in my memory long after the event itself ended. It was 2002, and my parents were avid fans of Halloween Horror Nights, attending every year since its inception. While they would revel in the festivities, I was often left at home with my grandparents. Living in Orlando, their regular absence during that season was to be expected. But this year was different. It would be my first time attending HHN, specifically HHN 12, held at Islands of Adventure. I was excited, as my parents and I often visited the park together during the daytime. As we arrived at the event, we were handed a map showcasing the various scare zones: Port of Evil, Island Under Siege, Treeks and Foons, JP Extinction, Island of Evil Souls, and Booville. While all of them had their appeal, it was the Island Under Siege that would leave a lasting mark on me, one that I would remember more as trauma than fun. The scare zone was touted as a supervillain takeover, and as a comic book nerd, I was thrilled. I had all the issues of Maximum Carnage, which was also the house's theme for the scare zone, leading me to imagine a heroic fight between superheroes and villains. To my dismay, that vision was shattered. Entering the queue, I noticed a gigantic glowing sign announcing the house's name. The line was long, but I don't remember really caring, considering the pulsating music of Static X and Power Man 5000 filling the air. I was just feeling the vibe. Once we finally stepped inside, I was met with a bizarre atmosphere resembling a nuclear reactor. I distinctly recall the scare actor portraying Carnage leaping into my face, heightening my sense of immersion. However, it was soon after that the experience took a turn for the terrifying. In one disturbing room, I saw a nuclear reactor worker possessed by the caretaker, who was horrifically dunking Iron Fist's head into a toxic waste barrel, accompanied by unsettling sound effects. This moment deeply unnerved me. Next, I entered a chamber where I spotted Thor, disfigured and entangled in electrical wiring. His costume made it clear who he was, despite his ghastly appearance. Afterward, we moved through a vortex tunnel. I can't quite remember when exactly this happened amid the chaos. What struck me as the most horrendous sight was in the next room, where a version of Spider-Man lay gruesomely torn apart, his head severed and crushed between two columns. At this point, I was overwhelmed. We then reached the nuclear reactor, and my heart sank even further when I saw Wolverine hung upside down, missing both arms, with his arms painfully skewered into a toxic waste barrel. I could hardly process it all. After this, I thought we were finally nearing the exit, but instead, we stepped into the last room, where we were confronted by a bloodied Captain America, his limbs strung up against the wall, guts spilling out grotesquely. The final horrifying image I can recall is the Punisher wielding a flamethrower. After those vivid and shocking showcases, I sensed something was deeply wrong, but I begrudgingly continued with the rest of the park. We ended our night and headed home around 11 p.m. I recall that HHN used to close at midnight back then. The nightmares that followed haunted me for weeks. I couldn't bring myself to attend another HHN event after that fateful night. When my parents asked me why, I told them about the gruesome scene with the mangled up heroes, but they insisted they weren't there. I thought they were just trying to calm me down, as I was convinced of what I had seen. The following year, I sought solace in online videos and photographs of the event, only to find none of my memories of the gory display reflected there. Video after video, photo after photo, including a documentary about the year's event, showed nothing of what I had witnessed. I even reached out to some of the cast members who worked in the house that year. They said, there were plastic bodies in the house covered in toxic waste, but none of them were superheroes, just normal civilians. I started to wonder if maybe my memory was just flawed as a child, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Why would I remember these horrific images so clearly instead of the haunted house itself? I remember the other houses we visited that night distinctly, yet those shocking visuals remain at the forefront of my mind. I honestly found myself questioning my sanity itself. More years passed, and though the nightmares gradually subsided, the vivid memories of that night stayed buried until I stumbled upon something that reignited everything. A few months ago, I attended an estate sale in Orlando. The house belonged to a former Universal creative executive, someone who had worked on numerous projects at the theme parks, including the Halloween Horror Nights events. I figured I might find some rare memorabilia or old promotional material to add to my collection, but what I found was much more unsettling. Tucked away on a dusty shelf, in the corner of the executive's cluttered garage, was a box full of old tapes, most of them labeled with the names of HHN houses and attractions. Among them was an unmarked VHS tape, its case worn and faded with age. Something about it seemed off, but my curiosity got the better of me, so I purchased it along with a few other items, assuming it would just be old promotional content. When I got home, I dug out my old VCR and inserted the tape, half expecting nothing but static. Instead, what played was something disturbing. The footage was grainy, with a flickering, almost decayed quality to it, but I immediately recognized the setting. The house from HHN 12. It was the same nuclear reactor-themed scare zone from that night, with toxic waste barrels and strobe lights flashing through the chaos. As I watched, my heart began to race. There was Carnage, Thor, Wolverine, and Spider-Man, all mutilated in the exact grotesque ways I had remembered. Then, something I didn't expect. The camera panned, and for a brief moment, I caught sight of a man, partially hidden in the shadows, wearing what appeared to be a lab coat. He wasn't supposed to be there. The tape flickered and cut to static, but before it did, I saw something flash on the screen. A spiral logo with an eye at the center. Then the tape abruptly ended. I rewound it and played it again, desperate to make sense of what I had just seen. But this time, halfway through the footage, the screen flickered to black. No heroes, no house, just static. And that's when my phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. "He sees you." I froze, staring at the screen. I hadn't told anyone about the tape, or even mentioned going to the estate sale. How could anyone possibly know? I tried to brush it off as a prank or a coincidence, but then another message came through. "He is coming." The next few days were a blur of paranoia. I even received a text with a low-resolution image attached. It was a still from the VHS tape, showing Captain America's lifeless, strung-up body. Then one night, I awoke to find the man in the lab coat standing in my bedroom. At first I thought I was dreaming. He stood in the corner, his figure barely illuminated by the moonlight filtering through the blinds. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I couldn't move a muscle. He stayed like that for what felt like hours, watching me with those shadowed eyes, never saying a word. And then just as suddenly as he had appeared, he was gone. I started seeing him everywhere after that, in the reflection of my TV, in the rearview mirror while I drove, standing at the end of grocery store aisles. Always in the background, always watching. I don't know how much longer I can take it. I feel like he's closing in, but then he never does. And I'm starting to wonder if there's even anything I can do to stop him. Even if I were to destroy the tape, maybe this is what he does. He makes it seem that one day he will finally harm you, but lets you harm yourself with your thoughts in anticipation. Almost like some kind of a fear virus. And once you're infected, there's no cure. Last night, I found a new text on my phone before I went to sleep. No number, no name attached. Just a single word. Always.